everybody, it's Catherine from Jane Catherine on Books, and we've come to the end of October, so the end of Victober for 2018, and I've called this film The Doom of the TBR. Oh, it's been one of those slumpy months. And I've called it The Doom of TBR because generally I don't often do TBRs unless it's a challenge or a readathon, like, you know, the October Victober. And for some reason, as soon as I do a TBR, I either end up with books I don't enjoy, I end up with more DNFs and end up slumpy. So I don't know why it is, but anyway, here's everything that's gone on in October. So from my list of reads for October, you'll remember The Crimson Petal and the White, Michelle Faber, very big chunky book. Now, I started off with this one and I am really enjoying it. I am. I've got loads of annotations in here, bits of stickies, but I thought if I carry on like this, I'll get this book done only and nothing else. So I decided to put it down, and I shall pick it up again and when I have more time, because there's so many things going on, there's so many things I want to annotate, that it's going to be one of them slow reads, and I'd rather do it, you know, in my own good time and make notes as I go, and that's part of it for a book like this. So it's on the back burner, but it's definitely a good historical piece of fiction, and yeah, I'll let you know when I eventually do finish that. So then I picked up the next one that I got down on my list, and that was Gideon Smith and the Brass Dragon, and this is a steampunk, and I found book one by accident, Gideon Smith and the Mechanical Girl, and you'll recall from my review that I really enjoyed it. I wasn't expecting to. It was a 5-star read. It was exciting, it was adventurous, it was magical. I liked the steampunk element, and also it got a really interesting plot. Well, unfortunately, I didn't feel the same for this one. I ended up DNFing it. It was very much, they set off an adventure to go and rescue the mechanical girl that ended up being captured from book one, and it just hadn't got the same feel. The characters, even Gideon Smith didn't feel like the same character. He was a character I really enjoyed in the first book. I just didn't feel the same, and there was a lot about who owns what. I mean, part of this is that Queen Victoria owns most of the developed world, but then we started going over to America, and they were saying, oh, this state was owned by the Turks, and this state was owned by the New Zealanders, and this state, and there was that many pages telling you that I thought, oh, I give up. So unfortunately for now, I've given up on that one. So that's Gideon Smith and the Brass Dragon. So that's another one from Victober gone astray. So then I thought, oh well, I'll pick one up from my Jane Eyre not readathons, Jane Eyre retellings, and you'll find that I've got a video of that up there if you've not seen it. So I thought, right, I'll start with Eyre. This is Eyre by Cait Forrester, and I was really looking forward to this. There was a GLBTQ twist on this, that actually James Eyre was the tutor, and he was hoping to have a relationship with Mr. Rochester, and I thought the premise of this was really interesting, something a little bit unusual, something quite contemporary, and guess what? DNF'd it. I often plod on with books. I couldn't. The plot, I think the plot idea is excellent. The writing style, it was just, sorry to Cait Forrester, but it just felt like, you know, when we were doing GCSE English and we had to write essays, and obviously there is development there for some really great stuff, but it felt quite childish in its style, and I couldn't cope with it for the whole book. So sorry, I DNF'd that one. So I thought, oh dear, I'm getting more and more slumpy. What can I do now? If I get into a major slump, I'll end up not reading at all. So I picked up a middle grade because for me, when in doubt, I always go to a children's book. I always go to something in your comfort zone. And I'd had this on my shelf for a little while. This is called Smart by Kim Slater. And yeah, thank goodness for this. This was a 4-star read for me. It got me out of my slump, my Victoriana slump. And this is the story of Kieran. He's about 15, 16, you can gather from the book. And he lives in Nottingham, in the city of Nottingham. And he is the narrator of this story. And he's a good narrator. There were a few issues with some of the things he came out with, and whether, because he does have some learning difficulty issues, whether some of the things that he did he was able to. But a very bright lad in observation and drawing, and you can tell from the story is very much neglected, and I love the characterisation of him. You wanted to give him a big hug, give him a cuddle. You know, he was a lovely, lovely lad. His father had died, or they didn't know who the father was, and so his mother was living with her partner and his son, and they made poor Kieran's life a living hell. So he befriends many of the I was going to say unemployed, but it's not the unemployed, the homeless, I couldn't think of the word then, homeless people in Nottingham on the side of the embankment. And it very much showed those that have and those that don't have, because there's certain parts of the embankment in Nottingham, and we know it very well, we used to live in Nottinghamshire, that there's one side where there's quite a lot of depravity, there's quite a lot of health inequalities, there's quite a lot of social issues, and then the other side of the embankment we've got West Bridgeford, which is a town which is much more affluent, and you know, not so many health problems. So I liked it. I liked the narration. He did give some humour with this, and basically it was about his life. One of the homeless is found dead in the water. That's no spoiler, you get to know that from the beginning, and nobody cares. Basically the police, the social workers, nobody cares, because, well, he's only a homeless old hobo, you know. It very much brought out the social issues, which I liked was well covered in this. So we got bullying, domestic violence, homelessness, drug dealing, health inequalities, cruelty to animals, very much a whole plethora of issues that are very much of today in inner cities, and I thought they were done really well. They weren't done in great depth, so if you want something in real depth, I don't think this would be enough for you, but we have to remember this is middle grade, and I think it was pitched just right. And yeah, a solid 4 stars, and got me out of a reading slump. So I thought, while I was on a roll, I'd pick up another one of my favourites outside of the Victober TBR, just to make sure that I wasn't going to get too slumpy. So I went to one of my faves, Anne Cleeves, one of my favourite crime authors, and I'm working my way through the Shetland series. This is Dead Water, and I'm trying to think what number this is. I'm sure this is about book 5. 1, 2, 3, 4... It might help if I looked at the right series. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, book 5. Book 5 in the series. It features Jimmy Perez. He's off on sick leave because he's had a bereavement, and he's really taking it, you know, very badly. He's not in a good state. So when there's been a murder, oh yes, there's been a murder up in Scotland. They have Evie, who is, sorry, not Evie, we have Willow. She's called Detective Inspector Willow Reeves. She has been brought over from the mainland to take over the case because Jimmy Perez is on sick leave, and I really enjoyed this. It's a solid 4-star. Jimmy Perez is in this, and I think it starts to bring him back into the working environment, back into getting his his detective juices flowing, and just a usually good, well-written crime novel by Cleeves. I really suggest you go and check this series out. She does another series which is the Vera Stanhope. That's a long-standing series now in the UK on the television. And you know what? I can't stand her character. I can't stand that series at all. It's strange. Same author, different character to Jimmy Perez. But many love Vera, so go and check Cleeves out. Whoops, I'm knocking all the candles over. So then next to, I thought I'll not go back to the full TBR, I'll go back to another Jane Eyre retelling, and this is one I've wanted to read for quite some while. Jane Steele. This is by Lyndsay Faye, and it's quite a gothic looking photograph on there. I've been wanting to read this for a while. It's mostly loved. If you look at Goodreads, it had many good ratings, and I thought, yes, my perfect book. It's Jane Eyre, my perfect classic, mixed with loads of murder. Loads of murder, she done them in. I thought, how can this book fail? You know, it's got everything that I love. Well, unfortunately for me, it did. Again, sorry, it was another DNF. I mean, that's 3. Is that 3 DNFs this month? That really isn't like me. I was going to give it 3 stars. I started on and I kept persevering with it because I know everybody really enjoys it. And I like the plot of it. I like the idea of it, that, you know, we haven't got the young, sweet, lovely Jane Eyre. We've got somebody that's a bit, you know, a bit of a psychopath really, and keeps murdering people, and anybody that isn't kind to others or crosses her, oh, let's do them in. I really couldn't get on with the writing style of this. Sorry, it just dragged, and I had to give up on it because it just wasn't for me. Just wasn't for me. I think it's one of those that you've got to read it for yourself and make your own opinions, because there's so many people that have enjoyed it, and there are quite a few that haven't. There are a few 2 and 3 star, 1 star I think even on Goodreads. So I think you have to read it for yourself and decide. It might suit you, but I found it slow and ploddy, to be honest, so sorry. Wanted to love it, ended up disappointed. So it must be the curse of the TBR, must be. So then I thought, oh crikey. Keep my fingers crossed, 3rd time lucky for a retelling, and thank goodness this saved the day. My Plain Jane, another retelling of Jane Eyre, and this is by Cynthia Hand, Brodie Ashton and Jodie Meadows, who call themselves the 3 Janies. And they are writing a series of different historical Janes. And this is book 2, and the first one, I'm trying to think what the first one was. I've not read it, and I actually would like to read it now. Was saying here anywhere? No, can't see what the first one's called. And I think the 3rd is about to come out beginning of next year. So I gave this a solid 4 stars, lovely deckled edges, and the reason for that is you've got to persevere with it in the beginning. I was expecting, because it was a retelling, I was expecting it to be contemporary, and fully contemporary, shall we say, and when you first start, it's basically the same story as Jane Eyre, and the same characters and everything, and I thought, how can this be a retelling? And then suddenly Charlotte Bronte pops up, and she turns out to be Jane's best friend. So I thought, oh, here we go, you know, we're getting nearer to what I was expecting. So you do have to bear with it a little bit in the beginning and start to get the feel of the book. At first I didn't think I was going to like it, but you soon become embroiled in this alternative story. And basically it is the same plot as Jane Eyre, with the same characters as Jane Eyre, apart from the fact we've got Charlotte Bronte brought in, and we've got the London Paranormal Society brought into the mix. So we've got quite a lot of paranormal, magical realism type activity going on, mixed in with the historical Jane Eyre plot. I felt that it was very well done. It was very well mixed together. Once you got the hang of what it was, you just have to go with the flow then, I think. If you start thinking too much along, wanting it to be a totally different story to Jane Eyre, or you're thinking about the true story, you could, you know, get yourself a bit muddled up. I think it's one of those, just go into it, expect just to take you a while to get into the writing style. I don't think you can tell who wrote what. It doesn't feel fragmented at all. I think it's very well written, and it's quite comical in places, and especially loved the chapters where we're getting more and more of the paranormal and that side of the plot. So thank goodness, thank goodness I did get one. I've got a few more left to read, but yeah, My Plain Jane by the three Janies. I'm going to be looking out for book one of that because I did like it. So I think that's about it. Didn't read any of my other books that were down on my TBR. Bit of a slumpy month for me in October. Not read as much as normal, but hey, you get months like that sometimes. And I think for November we've got non-fiction November. I'm not going to totally participate in it and make a TBR for that. I don't after how this month's gone, but I will be doing some non-fiction recommendations for you guys, because we do have a lot of non-fiction books. So anyway, see you next time for that. Bye for now.